Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and there were a number of developments this past week that give us a clear picture of what happened to Miami-Dade Police Director Freddie Ramirez. Now, let me start off by saying that one of the reasons why this story has been so devastating is that Ramirez was widely admired and respected both in the department and in the community. That is not an easy thing to accomplish for a police director in this day and age. But like all of us, Ramirez had his own personal failings, and they led to an argument between him and his wife that night in Tampa. Why they argued isn't important, but they argued. It grew loud, and the police were called. He was briefly placed in handcuffs, and he and his wife were questioned about an anonymous report that he had placed a gun in his mouth. They both denied that happened. Ramirez was calm when the officers questioned him, and his wife said she did not think he posed a threat to himself or others. Before he was released, Ramirez asked if the officers were going to write a report that would become public. They said they were. Ramirez asked if their body cameras were on. Again, the officers said yes, they were. After the officers left and Ramirez and his wife started back to Miami, Ramirez began to spiral. As a candidate for county sheriff, I suspect he thought the video of him in handcuffs, coupled with a police report that said he may have threatened to kill himself, would end not only his campaign, but cost him his job. As he drove back to Miami, he called Mayor Cava from the car and offered to resign. He spoke to friends and said he had messed up. Those who spoke to him said he grew agitated and emotional as he believed everything he worked for was slipping away. He then pulled off to the side of the road and shot himself. Now, I've had some people call and argue with me that we should not link Freddie Ramirez's attempted suicide with the suicides of other police officers, and that the reasons he shot himself had nothing to do with his job as a police officer. They may be right, but I disagree. I don't think you can compartmentalize a person's life that way. And so I don't mind taking a moment to talk about the mental health of police officers, because more officers die by suicide in this country than they do in the line of duty. This week, I spoke to Miami Police Chief Manny Morales about the need for more mental health counseling for police.
So, Jim, I don't have enough facts or I feel comfortable talking about the incidents surrounding Director Ramirez, other than the fact that my thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. And I can tell you, from beginning my 30th year in law enforcement, that this profession can be unforgiving, both on family, on your mental health, and your personal well-being. So as a preventive measure for many years now, I have subscribed to doing psychological therapy. I mean, all police departments, whether it be Miami-Dade or the city of Miami, we have an incredibly robust employee assistance program, because we recognize the stressors that are on our brave men and women each and every day. So I personally, I have a monthly checkup with my psychologist, just to kind of sit down, do a little biofeedback, and get some insight on how I'm feeling and my mental well-being as a whole.
When did you start doing that, and was there something that prompted you to start doing that?
So many of us experience personal problems. For me, started with having marriage problems and relationship problems, and that kind of led into couples counseling, and I absolutely initially saw the benefit of it. We did family counseling together, and that was almost 20 years ago. And then as it evolved and I started to professionally develop and ascend through the ranks, the stress becomes a lot heavier, and it weighs in on you. So as a preventive measure, like I said before, I subscribe to monthly sessions.
Whether you're feeling anxiety or not, right? It's just a matter of you just sort of like you just do a little tune-up every month.
And I personally feel, yes, and I personally feel that if you wait till the stresses are on you and you're getting to that feeling where you're already beginning to feel uncomfortable with yourself, it might be past the point of prevention, right? Now it might be the point of taking care of it instead of preventing to get to that. So for me, as an outlet, I get there and I talk, and sometimes I sit down and I feel perfectly fine. And once we start talking, issues will come up. And I can tell you very early in my role as chief, we had an incident where a mother took the life of 2 young kids. And Jim, I can tell you that I was not right. Every officer on that scene was not right. There are things that police officers see every day that cannot be unseen. We hear stuff that cannot be unheard again. And that scars your mind and your soul. And if you don't seek an outlet, it begins to weigh on you. Most of the calls that we respond to are not good. They're an incident of a child being abused, a marital couple fighting, a missing person, a suicide, a shooting where people are suffering and families are being destroyed and torn apart. So those begin to weigh on you. So as a coping mechanism, a lot of cops, their heart becomes callous. They become cold. They try not to build those relationships when they go on the scene. Instead of opening up and letting folks in as a coping mechanism, you kind of shoot them out. You kind of keep them at a distance. In addition to that, we have seen from research, and the data shows that a lot of cops turn to alcohol and other self-medicated methods. So we have to be aware, and we do have programs in place to kind of deal with that and help our men and women deal with those issues.
Well, one of the things, too, I talked to Judge Leifman last year on another story I'm working on with regard to mental health within the jails and prison system. And as an aside, he talked about how, you know, the types of training that officers can undergo, or the counseling opportunities that officers take advantage of and have done so more, is, he believes, one of the reasons why the number of police shootings in the city of Miami have also gone down.
Blackman is absolutely one of the greatest examples and one of the biggest advocates for being aware of the impact that mental health and mental crisis can have on an individual, both officers and the public at large. And I can tell you, one of the turning points, it's funny you should mention Judge Leifman, because one of the turning points in when I began to get this, broader awareness of the importance of mental health is I was on one of the first crisis intervention team trainings that Judge Leifman did back in probably 2001, 2002, as an early sergeant. And I remember them telling and teaching us that. And one of the components of that 40-hour training class, which, by the way, the vast majority of officers in the police department in the city of Miami have that, along with de-escalation training, was visiting the jails and seeing individuals that were in crisis and getting to meet them, getting to speak with them and see what kind of triggers they have and the issues that they go through, and being connected to them in a more human level. And I think that helps a lot of officers kind of cope. And when they go out in the street, they understand. Not everyone they encounter in the streets is a bad guy. Not everybody they encounter on the streets that commits an actual crime is fit to go to jail. That's why we have diversion programs, we have placement programs, and we have a host of services to kind of deal with every level of violations that we might encounter on the streets.
How difficult is it, do you think, to get officers, cops on the street, to buy into what you personally are doing? The idea of doing regular checkups with a psychiatrist or with somebody from the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program. Is there still a strong stigma associated with officers who try to do that? Are they afraid of being seen as weak if they do that? And how do you combat that?
So, Jim, there's a saying inside most police departments that cops hate change. The only thing that cops hate more than change is the way things are, right? So they're resistant to change. They don't like the way things are. So it is a little bit of a battle to get officers to kind of buy in on anything that kind of unsettles their daily routine, right? But we've seen some advancements. We have a incredibly robust peer-to-peer where we train police officers that are your peers, your friends, your colleagues at work, where you can open up and with confidentiality speak with them in reference to issues that you might have. And if they see an issue that requires some deeper attention, they can refer you to a psychologist. But just if you want to sit down and de-stress while you're at a critical scene afterwards, when we're debriefing, they're available for that. We have also a fantastic chaplain corps that comes out to every major incidents and debriefs with our officers. They go to roll call. So if you have a strong faith base, belief, they can help you also deal with those issues. But it also changes in the academy. The way that we're teaching the cops in the academy now is not the same when I went to the academy back in 1994, right? We're just today, our police academy class 145 was having a community meeting and having a face-to-face engagement with folks in the community to let them know how they feel about the police department, what kind of an impact a good cop has on the community and what kind of an impact a bad cop has on the community, right? So they begin to get all this exposure and all this opportunities to let their human side come through. And I believe that that is beginning to change that stigma, right? But in the police field, even though we're 22% female in our ranks, there is still a strong sense of macho. And I mean, especially in the Latin culture, you know, you have that a little bit of a resistance. Sometimes admitting and getting help, it can be seen as a sign of weakness. So we're trying to break down those barriers to get our officers the help they need.
Is what you go through in terms of you doing the monthly check-in, is that something that should be required of all officers? Do you have that within your power? I would imagine that's a contract issue with the union. It's also potentially a cost issue. But would there be benefit to making it more formal and requiring it among officers? Or do you think that would defeat the purpose if you required cops to go as opposed to them voluntarily going?
So funny you should mention that. One of the things that I want to do, so every year you're mandated to go and do an annual physical examination, right? Health checkup. If you miss it, you're subject to discipline, right? Unless you get a waiver from me. I'm the only one that can waive that requirement. So I want to have a synonymous program that addresses mental health. So one of the things that I'm exploring now is mandating every officer to go. But like you, I kind of question, you know, the effectiveness of making folks and force them to go and having them be resistant. So one of the things that I'm contemplating right now is kind of doing a trade-off, right? You go and you do your monthly, you do your yearly psychology therapy session, and I'll give you a day off. We'll trade it, right? And then listen, even if you don't want to go and you're just going for the day off, my hopes are that you sit there and these trained professionals just sitting down and having a conversation, you might realize, okay, there's something that makes me feel uncomfortable that I want to talk about, right? And if I can just reach one officer who might be in crisis, who is kind of resistant to getting help, and by kind of, you know, kind of doing this little program to kind of, and, you know, to incentivize them going in to get help, if we can get just one officer to get help and get right, man, I think it's worth it.
When we come back, the college boards have said it will no longer allow high school students in Florida to earn AP credits in psychology because the DeSantis administration refuses to allow any discussion of gender identity or sexual orientation in psychology classes. This decision will impact thousands of students across the state. Stay with us.